Thank you for joining us for part 3 of how to build a website for a small business.
So before we go into plugins, I'm going to just do another little, show you a bit more about this toolbar thingy at the top. Drives me nuts. Let's go into this one first. Okay, so there we talked about appearance, which is here on your menu. And the first instance, we go into themes. And this is where you would find your themes. Sorry, it's so slow this morning. So first of all, it would take you to the themes that you've already have installed on your site. When you install WordPress first, you'll get the most recent WordPress own themes, and they do them by year date. So there's 2012, 2013, 2014. They're likely to install 2019 and 2020 automatically on your site, kind of comes with it. You can use them, or you can choose to use another theme. It just, because they're the latest WordPress default themes, they tend to add them when you install WordPress. If you want to look at adding a new theme, let me go into Add Theme, and then we can scroll through lots and lots and lots of themes. So here we're in Featured right now. If we go into Popular, 3,892 themes to look at in Popular. So it can be very overwhelming, which is why it's a good idea to have an idea of the type of site look that you might want before you start, or you can very quickly get quite overwhelmed. You can also often look at other people's websites. If they're just using a standard WordPress theme, it will often say in their footer what the theme is. Because there'll be a copyright thing in the bottom, and it will tell you where the themes come from. So that can be a good way of helping to narrow down your search as well. So this is all the themes. Again, we can look at the latest themes, which will not, there's only 7,000. There's 7,000 of those. Favorites, you can start selecting ones that you like particularly if you're kind of looking around and you want to narrow it down, and you're kind of seeing which ones you like, and that just is a quick access tool for you to get back there. You can also search themes. So say you search magazine, and there we go. Now we're down to 627 themes to look at, but these are ones that are tagged as being a magazine type feel, so a kind of news site type front end. You can also search for something like portfolio, and that should bring up 870 themes there. And this then comes with functionality to create portfolios, so it's used a lot by artists who want to just create portfolios of their work, designers, those kinds of sites. So that's, there are many sites, many themes that you can look at. There are a few very good basic themes that are quite clean and quite simple, that are a good starting point. The Astra theme is one of those that's a very simple theme to begin with, so it doesn't have a lot of fancy stuff in it already, which makes it quite easy to customize. It's also one of the favorite themes of one of the big page builders, so they're quite heavily linked together, so they work very well together. So that's another thing to consider if you want to potentially customize your site more. Then there are some themes that are designed almost to go with certain page builders, so that they work very well together. So that's something to consider, and something to take a look at, and obviously something that we can talk about in more detail as well. We would then go into customize, and that's where we get access to our basic customization options with any theme. For example, in here, it's in the general settings, you can see this is where things like the background, accent colors, headings, the main text, buttons. So you can design a consistent button so that whenever you insert a button like a read more button, they will all look the same. Allows you to do some work on your social links in here. So each one will be different. We go into content. Yeah, so here in the content, for example, here's where you would set your blog layout and your archive layouts, which we'll look at in a bit more detail tomorrow. Your post layout, if you have Woocommerce installed, which is one of the big shop plugins, then you can edit some of the overarching options there in terms of Woocommerce. Light boxes go with your galleries and like pop out things, so you can customize those. And each theme will be different in how it does this. Menus are always in there, so you can edit your menu from here. You can also edit your menu directly from the dashboard, which we'll look at tomorrow as well. Most themes have one or two, sometimes three places that you can place menus. So you'll have your top menu bar, which is this one here, which is generally your primary menu, but often you get the option to put in additional menus, for example, in your footer. You may have a smaller sub menu that you put into your footer, for example. If you have particular plugins, Woocommerce actually being one of those, and it's hidden in wherever it was there in the content in this particular theme settings. Here we have the events calendar installed, so this is where we would go to customize the global settings for the events calendar. So some plugins will add themselves into your customization menu once you install them, so that you can access them directly from there. Okay, and we're not going to be doing CSS in this particular course. Okay, so I'm going to come out of that for the minute and go back in. So I've mentioned plugins a few times now. Plugins are one of the big advantages of a self-hosted WordPress site. They add a huge amount of functionality to your site, but they allow you to just add the things that you need. So it means that you're starting from a basic WordPress software engine, and then you're only adding to it what you need. That way you don't have functionality that you don't need, which adds weight to your site, to your database, to your loading speeds. It affects a number of things. The more you have installed on there, the slower and the bigger your site gets. So you don't really want extra stuff that you don't need. The type of things that you might get with a plugin is things like fancier galleries than the basic WordPress galleries, the ability to add portfolios, take backups, add additional security, get help with SEO, add Google Analytics to your site without having to code it, image optimization, page builders, which we've touched on and we'll look at in more detail tomorrow, which allow you more design options for your site, adding a shop, adding events calendars, even social sharing, more advanced social sharing options. You can add all of those things with plugins. Often when you install WordPress with your host on day one, they will suggest that you install certain plugins off the bat. And I would generally say yes to most of them, because they are suggesting things like Jetpack and Yoast and a Google Analytics plugin, etc., and WooCommerce, things like that are the ones that they generally recommend that people install from day one, because they know that people are going to need them irrespective of what they're doing. So you'll generally want to install those, but you will want more than that. There are more things that you'll want to add. So to get started, these are just a few of the ones that I would recommend that you look at them, or another plugin that does the same thing. So Jetpack we've talked about, which is brings the WordPress.com functionality to your site. Yoast is the biggest SEO plugin, and it helps you with your search engine optimization options, and helps you choose keywords and make sure that your content is ticking all the boxes in terms of getting Google to find you. It also does some back-end stuff for you to help with that as well. Monster Insights or others, there are a few that do this, that connects your Google Analytics account to your website without you needing to go and add code into the header of your site. And it also allows you to then display that information easily on your site and look at reports without needing to go into Google Analytics for that. WordFence is one of the security plugins. There are others like Securi. that you may want to add to give an additional layer of security protection to your site. Updraft is one of the backup plugins. There are a few. VaultPress is another one. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, which allows you an off-site, as it were, backup of your site. Next Gen Gallery is one of the big gallery plugins. Woocommerce is probably the biggest of the e-commerce plugins for WordPress. You can have things like WP Forms, which allows you to create contact forms and sign-up forms, etc. The events calendar is a good one if you are going to have events or you want people to be able to book appointments. The events calendar is a good one. Elementor is one of the big page builders, and we'll take a look at a few page builders tomorrow. Cookie Notice is handy. Again, there's a few different versions of that, but they're all there to allow you, to help you comply with data protection regulations. So you need to have a look at those as well. These ones that I've listed here are all free, or at least they all have a free version. There are generally premium versions available of most plugins, which give you additional functionality. For most of us, the free versions are sufficient for most uses. Occasionally, you may want to upgrade to a premium version if you have some very specific requirements on your site. For example, subscriptions with WooCommerce is a paid add-on to the basic WooCommerce plugin. We go into plugins from our dashboard again. We can look at our installed plugins, and this is where we would make sure that all our plugins are kept up to date. And we can add new plugins from there. When you add a plugin, you can search for the type of functionality that you're looking for example, gallery, and it will find all the gallery plugins for you. You can install and try them, decide you hate them and delete them. Sometimes it takes a while to find the right plugin for exactly what you're looking for. Galleries are particularly notorious for that because there are so many different gallery plugins and they all function slightly differently. So sometimes it can take a while to find one that suits your site and that you like. And there's nothing wrong with installing and testing a plugin and then deciding that you don't like it and deleting it. Just make sure that you do delete them and don't just leave them inactive on your site. You can also install plugins by uploading them from your computer. So often the premium plugins you will download from a provider. It'll come as a zip file, and then you upload that plugin, and you can see here on this screen there's the upload plugin option just here. And that allows you to install premium content that you've bought from elsewhere. So the WordPress.org, which is a self-hosted version of WordPress repository, has thousands of plugins in it. And it is one of those big advantages of WordPress because anybody can write a WordPress plugin. Which means that you have loads and loads of developers writing plugins for WordPress to add specific functionality to the site, to your site, because everybody's site is different and everybody needs different things from their website. So there are lots of very clever people out there who write plugins to do it for you so that you don't have to code your site to do it. Always look for the number of installs of that plugin and the number of stars that that plugin gets. You don't really want to be installing plugins that nobody else has really tested yet. And you also want to make sure that it's compatible with your version of WordPress. Sometimes plugins get out of date. They might have been written a couple of years ago and the developer hasn't updated them for the latest versions of WordPress. They may work, but they may also have some vulnerabilities in them that haven't been designed out of them because they haven't been tested with the latest version of WordPress. So always have a look at how many installs, how many stars, and whether or not it's compatible with your version of WordPress and when it was last updated. You want plugins that are up to date, compatible, and that you are not testing for the WordPress community. That have already been tested by many more people. So for example here, when you first go in, because Ask-A-Met begins with an A, it's always here in the kind of featured plugins because it's a very, very popular one. As you can see, 5 million active installs of that plugin. It's the spam plugin. And there's Jetpack again. It's got 5 million installs because people use that WordPress.com functionality on their sites. So always take a look at that when you're looking to install any new plugins. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to show that. Let's go here and look at plugins. So if we go to add new, again, you get, let's go to add new. So much like the themes, they will have featured, they'll have popular, they'll have recommended. In this case, the recommended is, this is a different one for plugins because obviously WordPress recommends that you install various plugins to give you that extra functionality. So here we go. We have Woocommerce, we have WordFence. These ones here are caching plugins. There are other ones that you can use for that. There's another one called WP Optimize, which is quite a good one as well, which also optimizes your databases, which we'll look at when we look at some more of the admin side of things and things to consider. Contact forms. Updraft was one that I mentioned in terms of backing up. There are different contact forms. This is the WP Forms one. Redirection plugins. This is there are different SEO plugins. Even WooCommerce has its own add-on for SEO. So you have lots and lots of options in here. You can always look at more details from them, which will give you a bit more information about who wrote the plugin and exactly what it does. And you can, of course, search for a specific type of plugin as well if you want to. And I always use galleries as an example because there are so many of them. And I think I have tested probably about 20 different gallery plugins at various times, and they're all slightly different. And they all look slightly different in terms of how they display. So it's a very personal choice in terms of galleries. The next gen one is a very popular one, and it is actually quite nice. Even the free version of it has some good features in it. What you find with things like functionality like galleries is one of the ones where once you've tried a few, you may choose to buy a pro version of a particular one that you like, just to get that extra customization in terms of colors and fonts, etc., and how galleries display. So that's a very quick overview of plugins, but they are a very important part of WordPress, and they are extremely powerful in terms of your design and the functionality of your site, and how many things it can do for you. So we are again focusing on WordPress, but when we're talking about pages and posts and website structure and navigation, that's applicable across platforms, because now we're starting to talk about user experience and how you help people find content on your site and the different types of content that you can publish on your site. So, website structure. The first page that you're going to reach when you go to a website is the homepage. If you're just going directly to their site, you've typed in their name and you want to go to their website, it's going to be yoursite.com or .org, .net, whatever your URL is. You have two options with a homepage. You can have a static page, which a lot of business websites have, or you can have what's known as the latest posts feed pages, which is what you will see on a more newsy type site, and is a kind of traditional blog platform setup where your latest posts in reverse chronological order appear on your homepage. You can do either. You can actually do a kind of a mix of both, depending on how you set up your homepage. But that is a decision that you need to make because it affects how you structure things a little bit further down the line. And it's a setting that you need to change in your global settings to say whether you're having a static homepage or a posts feed on your homepage. It's basically your shop window. It's the first thing people see. You don't want it to go on forever, but you do want it to have all the information that a prospective client might need to know about you. You may have further information sitting behind it, but you want to have links to all the important places on your website that you want people to go, potentially with a little summary on your homepage of your services, of what you do, who you are. People like to connect to a person. So that's where you get the opportunity to really kind of do your shop window for your site. Oops. Sorry, let me just go back. So there's different ways that you can do that. Here's 3 different examples of website front pages. These are all static pages, but you can see on the first 2, they both have an element of dynamic content on them, in that they're linking to blog posts or featured information, and leading people into different sections of those websites. The first one obviously is our website. We are focusing on, we are very much a face-to-face business, so our focus is on here's our team. These are the people that you're going to be meeting. Information about how you find us, what services we provide, and links to our latest blog posts, because that's an important way that we communicate information to our clients. The next one is one of my sites, and I'm more interested in focusing people into specific types of content that's on there. So that's the thing that's up front. And because it's a personal website, it's very much my face. So it's meet the person behind the website, because people connect with people. So having an element of who you are up front is a good way to make that initial connection with people from your homepage. The last one is one I did recently with a legal firm. So it's a little bit more, it's a bit plainer, it's a little bit more sort of office looking, because they're providing legal services. And again, for them, what was important was to get upfront what their services are. So that's the first thing that you see on that website, is these are our services, and you can read more about them if you step behind those pages and go follow those links. If you choose to have a static homepage, you can still have a news page on your website. So the blog function of WordPress is still there to use. You just create a blog page that sits in your top level menu, and people can still access that. It just isn't what they see first. And it can be a very useful tool to use, even if you have a largely static website, because sometimes you want to communicate with people in a more personal one-to-one basis. Or you want to advertise a new service or a new product, or you want to tell a story about something. And even on a business website, having that element of storytelling is a very good way of connecting with your clients. So just because you sell a product doesn't mean that you can't also tell a story. And I think it's a useful thing to think about when you're setting up your website, is how you can potentially use that feed of time-based content to connect with people. Other things to think about when you're looking at that sort of page is your theme will have a default layout for it, but there are changes that you can make to it in terms of whether you have a sidebar on it, and how you display images, and all those kinds of things can be set at a theme level, or if you're using another method of creating those pages, you can decide there. This is a typical blog feed page, news feed page. On our website is called blog because these are blog posts. We're writing tutorials, we're writing how-tos, we're directing people to useful content, and that's how we use our blog page. Sometimes people will rename it to news instead, because it's more press releases or news articles or sharing updates about services. We have a sidebar on ours. Some people choose not to have a sidebar. I think a sidebar on a news feed is quite useful because it allows you to direct people easily to recent posts, to different categories of content on your site. And particularly if you don't have one on your home page, it's useful to have a sidebar on subsequent pages. Okay. Another thing that you should think about upfront, because it gets a bit complicated to change them, and you do change them as you go because things change. But if you have a think about how you're going to use categories and tags, from the start, it makes it easier to structure things going down the line. And then you can keep your category lists kind of tight. So again, you've got a good way to navigate through the site easily based on the topics that your website is about. So if you think of categories as like a broad topic heading, and you can create subcategories under them, tags are more about specific details on your site. So again, they help people to search for content on your site. So a category might be software, and a tag might be Excel, for example. So it's just providing layers of searchability and layers of ways for people to navigate around your site, because you can generally there, when you see a category or a tag listed on a piece of content, you can click on that and it will take you to other pieces of content with the same tag or the same category. So it's another navigation tool. And you can also use them to display archives, which you can link to in your menus, which again can be a useful way for you to organize the site behind the scenes and helps you decide how you want people to navigate around. So first of all, we're going to look at creating pages. Pages are static. That's not to say that you can't update them, but they're not updated on a daily basis. It's not new content each time. A page will remain largely the same. You'll use them for the main sections, so obviously your homepage, but then you might have an about page, a mission statement, a contact page, and then if you have some specific topics that you want to direct people to at a high level, then things like if you have a gallery of products that you want to display, or you have a shop, you'll have a shop page, and any kind of featured content that you want to guide people to, you would probably use a page to display that content, even if the content itself links into a different type of content behind that. So whether it's blog posts or news posts, you can gather that content together into pages that help people find the useful content on your site, the most important stuff.
We hope you enjoyed part 3 of our small business website series and that you will join us for part 4.